All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Since the New York Mets had their fire sale just prior to Major League Baseball's trade deadline, All Star Pete Alonso has really gotten it going at the plate. Now, prior to last night's 0 for 4 performance versus the St. Louis Cardinals, Alonso was hitting 254 this month. But even with that, he still has an on base percentage of 368 to go along with 7 home runs and 16 runs batted in. Now, New York has won 5 out of their last 6, while they're 4-2 in the games this month in which Alonso has gone yard. Now, recently, one of WFAN's more popular sports shows with us that feature Sal Licata and Brandon Tierney. Licata gave his take on the Mets allegedly having a toxic clubhouse while putting some of the blame for that on Alonso. Now, sometimes we'll see shock jocks, sportscasters, whoever, put it out there to try to, make a name for themselves or try to see if they can break a story. But in this case, Licata to me really put the spotlight on himself, as we've seen many people come to the defense of Alonso on this matter. But at the end of the day, let's not dance around the fact that the Mets have failed this season. They came into this season with very lofty expectations, which, obviously, since they weren't living up to it, it led to the massive sell off last month. But for me, personally, I don't blame Pete Alonso for the Mets' issues. Now, did the Mets attempt to shop Alonso before the trade deadline? You heard the rumors about it but to me, it was about, in my opinion, okay, I feel it was just about the Mets putting out a feeler, while seeing how much that a contender would be willing to give up for him. And as the Mets' asking price for Alonso was very high, the slugger obviously has remained in Queens. Now, Alonso has also become a hot topic in New York due to the fact that he'll be eligible to become a free agent after the 2024 season. And after the Mets went on their spending spree this past winter, which included them re signing outfielder Brandon Nimmo and second baseman Jeff McNeil, there have been people, myself included, who have begun to wonder how long before they'll be able to get a deal done with Pete Alonso. Now, Alonso will be 30 years of age by the time that he hits free agency. And make no mistake about it, he's not going to get Shohei money because Shohei Otani is about to break the bank this coming off season. But to me, I think Alonso will definitely be handsomely compensated. Now, in regards to the Mets and Alonso, I don't think that the money is going to be an issue. I think the biggest issue is going to be the years. And I say that because, again, he's going to be 30 by the time he hits free agency. And yes, the designated hitter in Major League Baseball is universal now. And you think about that for a long term deal with a first baseman or any player, any positional player for that matter, as far as transitioning them at one point from being an everyday fielder to a DH. Now, with that said, it's still tough to predict what a player is going to look like at 37, 38, 39, and 40, even as a DH. I mean, you just look recently to the likes of two future Hall of Famers in Albert Pujols and Miguel Cabrera. And of course, once Pujols got that record deal in free agency with the Los Angeles Angels, he was not the same player that he was with the St. Louis Cardinals. Showed flashes and went out with a bang last year upon his return to St. Louis, but nonetheless, Pujols wasn't the same guy. And we've seen a drastic fall off in recent years. From Miguel Cabrera. Obviously, he's not the player that he was in his prime. And remember, this was another guy who got a big extension when he was on the other side of 30. So obviously, if you're the Mets, in my opinion, you want to take care of Alonso, but you still got to factor in the years coming down the pike on the back end as far as what it's going to be like for him. Now, the Mets want Pete Alonso, in my opinion. I really feel that. And if they didn't, I don't think that I put like this, you could put a guy out there, yeah. But if they were so insistent on trading Alonso, I really think that they would have traded him because they know they could have gotten something back for him. and it's one of those where you just really start a full on rebuild. But for me, I think the Mets team owner Steve Cohen really wants Alonso to remain a Met. That's just my opinion on this. Now, the fire sale last month led plenty of people to believe whether or not the Mets are going to be rebuilding in 2024. But my gut just tells me that Cohen will spend money this coming off season. Maybe not in the fashion that he did this past winter, but I think that he's still going to spend, especially with big money contracts like that of Max Scherzer off the books now. Now, make no mistake about it. Cohen wants to build a winner in Queens, and he also wants to be consistent in doing it, but also he knows that he needs stars in order to sell tickets. Now, Alonso is a star for the Mets. You're talking about a guy who's a multiple time All Star, home run derby champion. He's also the only player in Mets franchise history to have multiple 40 home run seasons. And right now, he's on the verge of becoming the first player in Mets franchise history to hit 40 home runs or more in consecutive seasons. He's also closing in on some history as he's just 17 home runs shy of becoming just the fourth player in Mets franchise history to hit 200 career home runs while wearing the blue and orange. And just maybe, if Alonso hangs around in Queens, he'll be the guy that surpasses the number 252. And anybody who follows the Mets knows that that's the all-time home run mark, which is held by Darryl Strawberry. And to give you an idea, as far as the Mets struggles over the years of their franchise on offense, Darryl Strawberry has not played for the franchise since 1990. So we're talking about nearly 35 years where that record has stood, excuse me. So the big question is going to be, will the Mets be able to sign Alonso long term? I think if I was a betting man, I would say yes, but at the same time, not to sound too hypocritical, nothing is guaranteed until it's guaranteed. Because I'll tell you like this. Um, Alonso is a career 254 hitter. His best season hitting wise, average wise, was last season when he had a 271 batting average with a 352 on base percentage. It's one of those, in my opinion. If Alonso goes into his walk year next year, with no long term deal, he's probably going to try to light it up like most guys do, maybe hit like 285 or so. And that could just be a flash in the pan for anybody who's trying to go out there and sign him. Pete Alonso is probably going to be for his career 255, maybe 260 career hitter. You have to deal with the strikeouts as most power hitters, throughout the years of baseball, are typically known for high strikeout totals. But at the end of the day, when you have a guy who has that thunder in his bat in the middle of this lineup, it makes a difference. What I think that the Mets need to do, and I've talked about this, I'm going to elaborate on it a little bit more now. It's all about giving Pete Alonso more protection in that lineup. They really haven't had a healthy Starling Marte this season. First and foremost, obviously, Mark Canna got traded during that fire sale to the Milwaukee Brewers. I really feel that the Mets front office made a mistake in the offseason and not going out there and picking up JD Martinez. JD Martinez has been, and the thing is, JD Martinez was hanging around there in free agency for a while, and the Red Sox, pardon me, the Dodgers rather, really got him on the cheap. And I think, even if JD hit 275 with like 25 home runs for the Mets, just for the sake of argument, he still would have given Pete Alonso more protection than he's getting right now from the likes of Daniel Vogelback in that lineup. And of course, when you don't have a guy behind you to protect you in that lineup, teams that are facing you, the pitching staffs, they're going to pitch to you a little bit differently. So I'll give Pete Alonso the benefit of the doubt on this. Yes, the Mets want him, but also the Mets have to provide him some protection in that lineup behind him. And I think if the Mets were to change things with their team over the offseason and give Alonso more protection, instead of hitting 274, maybe he gets it up to 270, 275 next season. That's just my opinion on this matter. But when it's all said and done, I think there's a strong possibility that Pete Alonso remains with the Mets. They want him. He wants to be there, I feel. Okay. But I think the money's going to be there. It's just a matter of the years. How many years are the Mets going to be willing to commit to Pete Alonso? And then at the end of the day, there's also the unknown factor because if you allow a guy to hit free agency, um, for the most part, it's a scenario where you never know where that mystery team's going to come from that's going to be willing to go above and beyond, if you will, to try to get a guy. I will say this though, since Steve Cohen has been the owner of the Mets, for the most part, the guys that he's wanted, he's gotten. Okay, you think back to last year's offseason. As soon as free agency began, he made sure that he wanted Edwin Diaz back. He resigned him, albeit, Edwin Diaz has been injured all season. He wanted Jeff McNeil back, took care of him. He wanted Brandon Nimmo back, took care of him, went out there and made the moves to sign Justin Verlander. Of course, the offseason before, signing Max Scherzer. And he was willing to pony up the bread. Obviously, things didn't work out for Verlander and Scherzer during their time with the Mets, but Cohen was willing to go out there and spend the bread. So, with that said, I think he's going to go out there and do whatever it takes to keep Pete Alonso. And like I said, if I were a betting man, my money would be on Alonso remaining with the Mets. But at the end of the day, nothing is guaranteed. Obviously, the Mets are not going to do a contract with Alonso right now in the middle of the season, and Alonso doesn't want a contract done with the middle of the season with the Mets either. So let's see what the offseason brings for Pete Alonso and the Mets. But I tell you one thing. It's one of those things. If you're the Mets, you definitely want to take care of this offseason because you don't want it hanging over your organization for spring training next year, especially when you're looking to get things turned around as well as next season. So let's see how things work out for Pete Alonso and the Mets going forward. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now, you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.